What's up, guys? It's Devon from Neptune Design again, and today there is no other word to say this. We have got one of my favorite people on LinkedIn right now. She is, man, I better take a deep breath because I got to get through a lot of things. Forbes, 30 under 30, ex-Google Ads employee. She is the owner of Ajala Digital Agency. I'm saying that right? Ajala.
Yes.
And she's been to over 90 countries, and she's also climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. And I'm sure there's a whole lot of other stuff that I'm leaving out, but we're going to uncover that in the interview. Everybody say hi to Pamela Wagner. Pamela, how are you doing today?
Hi, Devon. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm doing fabulous and great.
That's great. That's great. That's great. And I think the one thing that I love about Pamela is a few months ago, I didn't know anything about Pamela whatsoever. But every now and then I go on LinkedIn and I'm scrolling through my feed. And then I see this woman at a coffee shop in a different country, just chilling out by her PC. And I thought to myself, you know what? That's the life that I want for myself one day. So I feel like those pictures actually attracted me, or it kind of drove me to you. And I was like, I need to find out more about this person and just what she does for a living. So we're going to get into all of that today. We're going to talk about her life, her experiences abroad, and just what makes her such a wonderful person. So Pamela, are you ready for the questions?
Absolutely. I'm super looking forward to it.
That's awesome, man. First of all, how are you? How was your day? How have you been?
Good. So by the time we're recording this, it's Q4. So as most marketers probably watching know, it's, one of the busiest periods of the year.
Yeah.
So busy, exciting, lots happening, lots of transformation. So overall, like really, really good.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, I really do want to talk about, like your day to day and, running an agency. But before we get into all of that, I think we should start at the beginning because I really want to know what makes you tick. I want to know what it was like when you were growing up.
Yeah.
Born in Austria, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So paint a picture for me. Tell me what it was like when you were growing up and what made you so ambitious from a young age.
Yeah. So, okay, we're skipping the boring questions. We're going right there into you. So I think, what I get a lot of times in the world is like, oh, but like, you grew up in Austria, you have this like privileged background. And I mean, anyway, you're white and everything. And I think it does help a little bit to understand that I didn't have the easiest childhood, right? So even though I grew up in Austria, I skipped 2 grades in school. So I was always bullied. I was always the youngest. I was always the smallest. I never had any friends really until university. So it was
Wow.
10 years of bullying in school, which was very rough. But it also prepared me to really go my own way without caring about what other people think. So, like that kind of peer pressure, what people experience, I dropped it very early. I don't have that, right? And next to that, unfortunately, like my parents had like a 6.5 year long divorce.
Wow.
So I also had very challenging circumstances at home where I have to say I have full respect for my parents. I have nothing but gratitude for my parents, and they did their best. And I found a way to say, you know what, it really did prepare me for life because I already had the most challenging parts of my life before the age of 20. So it could
Wow.
only get better,
That's
right?
true.
But at the same time, like that also prepared me to, because I was a single child, to grow up as this young, independent woman that can do everything on her own and all of that, right? So, which of course can sometimes be a challenge as well. But I would say it was a pretty good school of life growing up.
Oh man, it's crazy you say that because myself and my sister were born like 11 years apart.
Mm.
So I was kind of like the only child for
Mm.
11 years. And
Yeah.
there's something that happens when you're kind of like the only child whereby you develop this fierce independence, and
Yeah.
people just they don't get it, because I think a lot of people are dependent on other people's opinion of them, or they kind of need permission to push themselves. It's not like they would just push themselves by themselves. They've always need that social marker or seeing somebody else do it. And one thing that I find is you just end up developing this tendency of just taking more risks than the next person, purely because you know that there's not so much to lose socially, so much to lose, in a group.
Yeah. Yeah. And there is a book I'm currently reading, which is called You Are What You Say by Mathew Budd. And they've actually done studies which show that people who end up being entrepreneurs are usually those who grew up either alone or in some sort of circumstances that made them become very independent very early on and become those risk takers, right? So that is really a fact out there.
It's really amazing that you say that, because I was also watching this Kobe Bryant, I don't know if it was a documentary or video, and he said that because his father was a professional basket player. So what happened was he was always going from school to school to school, and he never had any friends whatsoever. He said he ended up dribbling himself to sleep. So literally just playing with the basketball and then falling asleep and then waking up with the basketball in his hands. And it's so amazing that the type of player that he became was the type of player that didn't succumb to social pressure, that didn't give in to the moment, that kind of rose above the moment. And everybody else looked at him like he was some kind of superhuman for doing that. But I think it's because when you're alone for long periods of time, it actually develops some sort of mental toughness.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that can be of benefit to a lot of situations, right?
Yeah.
But then what we'd also need to practice is, taking everything a bit back to our heart, because we're too much in our heads and thinking that we can think ourselves out of everything. Where sometimes we should just chill a little bit more and relax, and be.
Pamela just described me perfectly. Thinking you can think yourself out of every single, sometimes you just need to do and think less.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So Pamela, tell me, when you were growing up and all of this is happening, in your childhood life, and you've got this stuff happening with your parents as well. What were your interests as a child? What were you gravitating towards? Like for me, it was Lego. I absolutely loved Lego. It was dinosaurs, and it was, I wouldn't say cars, but I would say more along the lines of speed or anything to do with speed.
Yeah.
I was very much into that when I was a kid. How about yourself?
Yeah, I very much resonate with the cars as well. So I would be angry at anybody who would try to gift me like a Barbie doll or anything. Like I hated that, right? And reading, I loved reading, and anything that dealt around, I loved dinosaurs, ages back, like the pyramids, ancient Egypt. And it's funny that you mentioned Kobe Bryant, because I actually started playing basketball at the age of 9 in a team. And where I'm now is actually close to the place. Like I can actually look at it as across the street where I used to play matches twice, 3 times every week.
What? Are you serious?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
It's like insane the way this all came together.
And who is your favorite basketball player? Like who do you like?
So
please don't say Steph Curry. If you say Steph Curry, I'm going to end this interview right now because I don't like
No. So I'm very biased here with the response I'm going to give. I played in this hall from the age of 9 to roughly 13. And I remember myself back then, thinking, how cool would it be if one day someone from the NBA draft team would sit there and watch us, and even though I'm small, right? I'm not the best person for the NBA, right? Because of my size. But I was like, this would be super, super cool. And then, this was now 20 years ago. And fast forward about, I think 3 or 4 years ago, a friend of mine who I'd gotten to know a couple of years earlier visited me here. And we went to this hall and sat up there. And this was NBA player Ronny Turiev.
Wow.
So I got that situation from 20 years ago, right? And it was so beautiful to see, because you'll see that things do come true in their own timeline. And so I got to be biased. Like for me, like Ronnie is my favorite player
Oh,
because he's
that's
just awesome as a person. Like I love his personality. He's
yeah.
doing great stuff now.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I also noticed that when you know more about someone, you somehow gravitate towards supporting them
Yeah.
as well. Like for me, they're just a whole bunch of guys on TV. So I'll just be like, okay, I like the tallest one, or I like the one who can dunk the best, or I can like
Yeah.
the best shooter. But once you actually know someone, like you know that person and everything that they might have gone through to be where they're at, it
Yeah.
just builds this admiration within you. And you
Yeah.
think to yourselves, wow, that player is really my hero.
Yeah. And I mean, Ronnie and me definitely bonded on like a lot of, I would say, similar childhood experiences and like the way we developed and so on.
Yeah.
So yeah, beautiful person inside out.
That's awesome. So, talk to me about what life is like. Because, I mean, I grew up in South Africa. So, in South Africa, the sun is always out. You're riding your bike outside with your friends, or we're always outside and we're doing all of these activities. We're running up and down. What was it like as a child in Austria? Is it do children grow up with this very like inside lifestyle where they're always in the home? Or what is it like, when you're a kid in Austria?
That's a good question. So I think for a lot of people, I can say we have reliable electricity and water supply. And you have like hot water whenever you want it for as long
Don't
as you
even
want it.
get me started. Don't even get me started. This morning, you know what my
Yeah.
biggest fear was? That this
Yeah.
whole set was going to be dark because there was load shedding. For those of you who don't know what load shedding is, it's when
Yeah.
the South African government cuts off our electricity because they did not plan to build any power plants because they're basically corrupt. That's
Yeah.
the short story of it. So I woke up this morning and I literally thought there was going to be no electricity to do this interview
Yeah.
whatsoever. And that was like my biggest fear. Anyway, moving back to Austria.
Yeah. So I think, that's where probably a little bit of like privilege plays in where you can go out, you're safe, you don't need to worry about anything. We would spend a lot of time outside, right? Going to playgrounds or whatever. And what's very common here for a lot of families is that in summer you would fly somewhere for a holiday, like maybe Greece, Egypt, Turkey, Spain. And then in winter you would go skiing for a week or two,
Interesting.
right? So I grew up with these two contrasts and like seeing new countries or new places like every year, which I think was a great preset because it started opening up my mind very early.
Yeah.
And other than that, I mean, we have great public transport. So like you as a kid, you're not really like, I would say me being driven in a car to school would be very unusual. Like that's really the minority of people. And school is great. I mean, there's of course always a lot of things that could be improved about school and so on. But overall, school is free, right? You get the education that you should and would need, and you can make something out of yourself if you just put a little bit of effort in. So it is a very great country, and a lot of people I think are not aware of all that is already here. So yeah.
Wow. Okay. So what you're saying is I got to move to Austria then. Okay. I'll make a note of that.
Personal preferences, I'm not sure.
As long as there's electricity, I that's a start. That's
We
a
have that.
start.
We have that.
All right, cool. So this is now your life in school. And tell me about life after school. What happened after school? Did you have any idea on what type of direction you wanted to go after high school? What did you plan for yourself?
Yeah, nothing at all. I studied what everybody studies when they have no idea what they want to do. It's like business and economics.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, studying in Austria was for free, right? And I always wanted to study abroad, but I just didn't know how to go about like scholarships or, financing such things, right? So I stayed here and studied business, and I also studied Chinese, but I didn't finish it because it's just
Wow.
they just want you to learn a whole bunch of stuff that I don't believe is necessary if you really want to know the language. So I was like, I don't need the degree for that. And yeah, so I took about 1 to 2 years longer for my bachelor's degree, like 5 years.
Yeah.
But I was always like working next to it. I was volunteering. I was playing some sports, like not competitively, but sports has always been a major part of my life.
Yeah.
And yeah, I knew pretty early on that whatever I did outside of university is going to be more important than the grades I would get in university.
Ah, I see what you're saying. But I guess what I'm asking is, was there, like, for example, when I grew up, I wanted to be a paleontologist with my whole heart.
No, there was none of that.
None of that.
No,
You
I
just,
had no
you wanted to do
idea.
well. That's it.
I don't know if I had much of an idea about the future, because the only thing that I kept thinking to myself is, even though my life may be troublesome right now, it's going to be so much better in the future. And I may not know how that's going to look like, but I know it's going to be so much better and good. And it's probably going to be better like than I can imagine.
Yeah.
So that's what I always kept up. And during university, I just wanted to try out things because I knew that if I didn't try them out, I wouldn't know how they would actually be like.
Yeah. It's very weird that you say that, because a lot of people do the opposite. A lot of people
Yeah.
say, I don't want to try anything new because it feels foreign and I'm scared to be out of my comfort zone because somehow I might fail publicly. And I think that's a big fear with a lot of people. It's the trying new things equals public failure in their eyes, and it's something that they kind of shy away from. So it's very interesting that you say that you were into trying new things so that you could figure them out and see what fits you or what doesn't fit you.
Yeah, I mean, during university, I started off with working in a bank, then an insurance agency, then I worked on an entrepreneurship project in Nigeria, then I was a language teacher in Russia. Then I volunteered in the student organization for a long time, and I worked with a social enterprise, I worked with startups. So I really tried to expose myself to like a lot of different things to see what's going to catch my attention.
That's beautiful. It's that movie. Have you ever watched that movie, Yes Man, where the guy, I think it's Jim Carrey. He basically makes this pact with this guru that he has to say yes to every single thing in life. And it ends up just being the most wonderful experience of his life, because, when everything presents itself, he's just like, yes, I will do that. Yes, I will do that. Even if he's reluctant, he says yes. And it's actually amazing that you said yes to so many things. And I think on the whole, you would say all of them were wonderful experiences. Not that you wanted them forever, but at the time, would you say that that was a wonderful experience for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for example, when I was a language teacher in Russia, I was interested in teaching, but I was wondering, is teaching of me to interest if I do it every single day?
Yeah.
And so I found out that no, it's not. I love teaching here and there. I now teach at the university, but it's cool if it's a couple of days. But I have my utmost respect of every teacher out there, because that's a job I could not do. So
Wow. Wow, that's true. Like, I also think about teaching sometimes, and I'm like, I don't know how they get the energy level to deal with kids every single day. And I mean, I'm a high energy person and I love kids, but after a few days, I'm like, okay, I don't love kids as much as I thought. Okay, they can go now. So for a teacher, like, you have a set amount of kids for the year, and then next year you get a whole new set of kids. I don't know how they have the energy to do that, but I guess that's why they're heroes.
I guess so. Yeah.
Definitely. So I think a lot of people are here to find out about Google Ads, and I don't really care about the Google Ads part, but I know my subscribers do. So I have to ask, what was life like at Google in the first place? And how did you even get an interview to work at Google? How does that work? Did they call you and say, hey, Pam, we think you're doing really good. We see all of those good grades. We're going to give you a shot at Google. How does that whole thing work?
Yeah. So I was in the last months of my master's degree in Shanghai at that time, when I was working with the career advisor or career coach of that university. And I think that was like 2 months before graduation or something. He brought across this opportunity where he was like, hey, Google is looking for people to join the company. Don't you want to apply? And so I was like, well, if someone's already asking me, then obviously I'd do it. I definitely would have not applied myself ever, because I would have underestimated myself so much.
Yeah. That's how I feel about Google as well. I'm like, those people are super smart. I don't belong there. That's how I feel about applying for a job at Google.
Yeah. I think it's a little bit of that imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
right? And so the thing was also at that point in time, because I'd worked before and I'd volunteered and so on, I already knew a couple of people who were working in Google. So I asked them for a referral, and I think I had like 3 referrals. And of course, when you have a referral for a job, then that's always more powerful than if you just apply.
Yeah.
So that was a good start. And I was really good with CVs and interviewing. So I'd even like during university coached other people with their CVs and interviews. And what turned out after those like 5 interviews, so 2 online and 3 at Google, was what they really appreciated about me was this diverse background of having tried so many different things, having traveled quite a fair amount already back then. So I was this generalist that they could now form into a specialist. And that was very, very attractive to them.
So at that stage, how many countries were you up to?
I would say must have been around 40 or so.
Wow. Wow.
I would say so. Yeah. And I mean, life at Google is pretty cool, I would say. Like you'd have a 9 to 5, and they really try to keep you in a 9 to 5, so like not work too much outside of it. I mean, by now, of course, there's a lot of different teams, so I cannot speak for every team.
What's happening now?
Yeah, but I mean, in the morning you'd go to the gym at Google. You'd have sometimes your personal trainer there from Google, and then you'd have breakfast.
They've got a gym.
Google.
They've got a gym at Google.
And also like an Olympic swimming pool in some of the headquarters, especially. And you can have a personal trainer if you want. Like it was for free. So I had like issues with my back, and then I got like tailored exercises.
Yeah. I want that.
Yeah. So, you can't have that in all the in-country offices because they're usually smaller, right? Yes. But if it's the headquarters, like in Dublin, I think London as well, San Francisco and so on, you'd have a lot of these things. And then you do your work, lunch again at Google. Again, food is all free. And
that's actually one thing I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah.
It is my only burning question about working at Google.
Yeah.
Not too much interested in the salary or the corporate life. And I need to know, Pamela, and this is a very serious question. How good is the food on a scale of 1 to amaze balls? Like, where does it fit in? How good is the food at Google?
I would say really, really good and healthy. So they cook really well, really healthy. You have a lot of different options. And good restaurant quality. Like they really put in an effort.
So you got, and there's like this buffet, and you can just choose what you want. And okay. So that's why I need to work at Google. It's the food. I don't mind the salary. I don't even need a salary. As long as the food is good, I'm there.
And you know what a lot of people don't realize is actually like not having to worry about food takes away a lot of brain power.
Wow.
So that's something, or having to worry of food takes a lot of brain power. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
So it was a great feature that if I could still have it now, I would definitely opt in for it.
Yeah. And in terms of the corporate culture at Google, because the thing I wonder about Google is there's so many of you. How do you actually have meetings? How do you actually like link up with each other? Because it always, when we see these videos about Google campuses, we see a guy on a scooter, we see a couple of guys over there, we see one dude on a pad and he's doing something, we see one person sleeping. Like, how do you actually sync up with your other team members? And is there like a proper department whereby you guys sit together and you have the objectives together? Or is it more everything is remote and you're just constantly DMing each other and linking up with a specific person, just one person, to perform a specific function?
So when I was at Google, it was all very much in person, right? And we started having, I think we fought for this to have 1 week per quarter that we would be allowed to work from another office. But back then there was like a fight, right? And I was like, let's just do this. So I made obviously full use of that. So I went to like the Google Dubai office. I went to the Ghana office, the Nigeria office.
Wow.
Any London, Vienna, I don't know, any other one as well. I forgot it. So, and the cool thing is when you are in one of the headquarter locations, you automatically bump into people. And that creates some sense of networking, some sense of community, which I think is something that often gets lost when too many people work remotely.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was something that was really off value to me.
Yeah. And since you were at Google and you basically went into being a paid search specialist, did you fall in love with Google Ads then? Or how did that whole process work of getting into Google Ads themselves?
So I think what's important to know is I never had the goal of becoming an ad specialist. Like I somehow fell into this role. And even in the first couple of weeks, I was like, I actually don't even know what my role is about. Like it took me some time to get clarity. And what then happened is that I built up all these skills. And while you're at Google or while you're working in any company, you never really have the feeling of what you're worth. You think you're worth that, I don't know, $10, $15 amount per hour or however much you make.
Yeah.
And only when I left and people started to come to me and I started to work with people, I realized the value of my knowledge. And so because of that, it became something that was fun for me. Like I'm good at something. I don't necessarily believe in the passion theory.
Yeah.
So for me, it's more like if I'm good at something, then I like it. And if I see its value to other people.
Yeah. Okay. That actually makes a lot of sense. So you went on your own and you decided to start, I'm presuming after Google, you decided to start this agency. What made you decide to do the agency thing instead of just go and look for another job?
So I was in this position where for the first time in my life, I could freely decide whatever I wanted to do. I didn't have to listen to my parents anymore because I was already, above that age. I didn't have to study. I was done with that. I didn't have to listen to any boss. I didn't have to do any courses. And that situation itself was very exciting to me. And so I just thought, well, this is now or never. So let me just try it. If it doesn't work, I can always go back to finding a job.
Okay. All right.
So, and I'd also like put some savings aside. So I knew that if like for a couple of months, this wouldn't work out at all, I wouldn't have to suffer or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess that's important as well, because I know when I left my job to start Neptune Design, I remember sitting in front of my laptop and thinking to myself, and I said this to Gabriella in the previous interview as well, you sit down and you realize this is the best feeling in the world, but it is the worst feeling in the world at the same time because you're building something from scratch and it's all on you. There's no person to ask. There are no resources. You are the main resource for your business, and it's your job to start building something from scratch. And I guess what I'm trying to ask you is this the first business that you've built from scratch, or is this just the most recent one that you built from scratch?
I would say it's the first serious one it's the first serious one. Yeah.
It's the first serious one.
Yeah.
And did you know until that point that you were entrepreneurial and it was something that you wanted to try out? Or is this just another part of your yes theory of just saying yes to bigger and bigger challenges?
I think it's part of the yes theory because I don't come from an entrepreneurial family. It's not something I grew up with, not something I was taught or anything. So it was literally carving a path that I had no idea how it's going to look like. And what's always carried me through is trusting my intuition and framing my mind in a way that it leads me to success. Like I've become very good very, very early on about managing my mind, the thoughts that are going on in my mind, and then replacing any kind of like negative thoughts or thoughts that wouldn't be useful to me with any more positive ones.
Wow.
And then seeing simply how things come to be because of that.
Wow.
So, I mean, you mentioned Tim Carey earlier. I totally love him.
Yeah.
He has this example where he always wanted to have this bike, but he couldn't get it because his family, I think, was too poor or something.
Yeah.
And then like 2 weeks later, someone had entered his name in like a draft, and then he won this bike, but like through someone else, right?
Wow.
Yeah. And that kind of describes a lot of my life. Yeah.
That is super cool. That is super cool. And
Yeah.
talk to me about the name Ajala. Where does it come
Yeah.
from? What are its origins, and why did you want to call it Ajala?
Yeah, so when I was 18, I always wanted to work abroad or study abroad. So studying abroad wasn't possible, so I went with working abroad. And through a bunch of circumstances, and saying yes, I ended up in Nigeria working on this entrepreneurship project
Okay.
at 18 as a white girl, right?
Crazy for a white person to be in Nigeria. Let me just tell you that it's not
Yes.
it's not normal. Yeah.
Yes. And I mean, a couple of weeks before that, even one of my aunts like asked me, she was like, couldn't you look for an intelligent country? Literally translated from German, right? And so I ended up in Nigeria and had a great time with everything that I saw and experienced there. And as time goes on and passed, my friends there would start calling me Miss Ajala because of me traveling. And Ajala, I hope I'm not butchering it now, was a Nigerian traveler who traveled large parts of the world, I think, on his bike.
Okay.
And so when it came to like naming my company, I didn't want to use my own name.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, let me just take this and add a digital so it roughly says what it's about.
Yeah.
And I can always change it later.
That's
I didn't get a better
beautiful.
name, so I just kept it.
And it's a beautiful description because you are literally that person who's
Yeah.
traveling to different countries. You're into digital, and it's kind of like a digital nomad-y type of vibe as well. Wow. That makes a lot of sense. That makes a whole lot of sense now. Okay. I'm going to look at
Yeah.
that name differently.
And I think one thing that I want to add here as well is it is, or it reflects a little bit of effort from me to give people a different image about Africa or the countries in Africa, because a lot of people only, when they think about Africa, any country, they think about poverty and whatever, and crime, blah, blah, blah. But it gives me an opportunity to tell a different story, to open people's minds to, hey, there's a different side to this continent or to this country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always tell my friends in the USA, like, Africa, there's no other place like it. Like you can't think about Africa like you think about it in Western terms. So I think in another place, or in other countries, they measure, your gross GDP, they measure the education level of the people. But if you spend 3 weeks in Africa, it could blow your mind because everything is so much more diverse. Everything is so much more untouched by the developed world, and it's the type of beauty that people don't really understand until you're there. Like, it might not be that we have the best roads or we have the best anything, but if you literally just take a time and just breathe it all in and see what Africa is about, everyone of my friends that comes to Africa, they want to come back. They definitely want to come back. And it's weird because they don't have that same feeling when they visit, for example, maybe Portugal or some developed place, but they really want to come back to Africa. Like, there's this burning need inside of them to come back to Africa. So I always found that weird as somebody living in Africa, but having lived in England for 2 years, now I kind of get it. I kind of understand it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. So we talked about your agency, Ajala Agency, and what I want to hear from you, because I like these types of questions, is what was your worst day at your agency? The day that you said, okay, I want to bury my head in the sand. I want to give all of this up. I want to walk away from Majala. It's not worth it. What was that day like?
Yeah, I'm not sure it was always walk away from it. I think there were definitely a couple of moments where I thought about, okay, maybe I should get a job. So I mean, most entrepreneurs will have had that situation where they couldn't pay bills.
Yeah.
So I found myself in a situation where I couldn't pay my credit card. Like it literally, like some payments were coming in late, and I just didn't factor it in well. So and I talked with the credit card company, and instead of them being helpful, they actually like screamed at me and pretty much were like, why are you doing this? Who do you think you are? Like, do you think you can't just borrow any money? Like they totally went like off the wrong way.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And I mean, I complained about it afterwards and I was crying on that phone because I was like, I'm here trying to be really open and honest with you. And you're just pretty much making me
Shutting you down.
party.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was really hard because I don't like owing anything to anybody, right? So, and it was about, I think, a period of like 2 to 3 weeks, which was a little bit tough, but I just tried to use my mind, just try to focus on the good things, and I knew that I was going to be able to
get out of
pay it because I had these payments coming in, and so, but that was a little bit tough. Yeah. I'd since like changed a whole lot of things so that doesn't happen again. So it was a very teachable moment, but yeah, definitely one of the harder ones.
I know also when I speak to most South African entrepreneurs, the problem is not making the deals or doing the deals. The problem, even for me, is nobody teaches you in school. No one comes and sits down with you and says, this is how you handle your payments and this is what to do. These are the processes to follow so that you don't get in a financial hole. And I think what a lot of entrepreneurs do is they run into business, they make all of these deals, but they do not work out proper contracts or payment structures with their clients. They just assume that the clients are gonna, fulfill their end of the bargain. And for the most part, if you get a good client, you shouldn't have any problems. But also, there's a whole big part of running a business that has to do with financial management, like making sure that you have cash flow to actually do the things you need to do and actually run your business. And a lot of entrepreneurs, they have this, I love this, they have this hope theory whereby, if I just hope and pray, things will work out fine. Then tomorrow things will work out fine. And then if it doesn't work out fine, I'll just hope and pray. And I had to learn that the hard way, that's actually the worst way to run a business. You actually have to sit down and think about the stuff that you don't want to think about and figure out how you're going to get that money in before you even do the work. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs feel like they have to do the work first, and then they have to kind of beg the customer for the money afterwards. And I found out that that is the wrong way to operate. I operated that way in the first 2 years, and it was the worst. It was the most stressful experience of my life.
Yeah, because financial worry is the most stressful you can have, right?
Yeah.
That just outruns any other worry. And I mean, the thing is, I had like my majors in my bachelor's were finance and accounting. So that goes to show how much we learn in university, how applicable that is. And then, we still run into these situations later on because the actual practical stuff is not being taught.
That's true. That's very true. That's very true. And I think even accountants, it's one of those things that you see the figures on paper and you understand what you're supposed to do, but actually doing the stuff, it's a whole nother level. That's why I always tell people, if you are in business, you have to be in business. You can't have like one foot in, one foot out. You have to experience that lifestyle and you have to understand what goes into being a business owner. It's not something that you can learn from a textbook. It's not something that you can learn from maybe watching TV. You have to actually go and do it. It's one of those things.
Yeah. And one of the books that really helped me with this was Profit First from Mike Michalovich. I'm not sure if you've heard about that.
Never heard about it. Yeah. So hold on, let me write that down.
One.
Profit First
Mike Michalovic. I'll send you a link, and then you can put it in a show notes or so. It's a Polish name, but he's an American, and he pretty much shows you a system and an accounting system so that you focus on yourself first. And it's very counterintuitive to what most accountants would do, but it simply works. Like, it's amazing. And it's also like helped me kind of transform the way I run and manage my business.
Okay. Yeah. I'll definitely check it out. I love reading. I absolutely love reading, and I love business books. It's all I read is just books about how to get better at business, and mentality books I really love as well. So how long have you been running your agency for?
It's been 7 years now.
Okay. 7 years. And employee-wise, how many employees do you have underneath you? How big is your team?
The team's at any point somewhere between like 5 to 6 people.
That's good.
Currently a little bit more because it's autumn and fall, and yeah, everybody wants to get their brand out and get those sales.
Yeah, definitely. But I suppose that's good for us, right?
More yeah. I'm cool with it. Yeah, just come.
So you've been doing this for 7 years. So I have to ask you this. What do you think are the biggest mistakes that you see agencies doing when it comes to, just doing business or serving their clients? Do you see a lot of agencies maybe faltering in a certain way that you find very common? Is that something that you notice sometimes?
So there's 2 types of actions that I do not think are beneficial to the industry here. The first one is people just starting an agency because they think it's something they can make money with without having any idea of digital marketing, and just outsourcing everything. That's absolutely wrong and has created a lot of mistrust, unfortunately.
You've just described every single person that I've met in the past 3 years, but I'm just gonna say, okay.
Yeah. And the second one is that just a lot of agencies do too many things at once, so they don't specialize.
Yeah.
So they do social media and SEO and websites and everything else because they can upsell it to the client.
Don't forget HubSpot. They do HubSpot as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. We're HubSpot certified and Google partner. No, we're a Google Premium partner.
Yeah.
And we're a Meta Blueprint partner or whatever. Yeah. So.
And they also do blog writing as well. Don't forget that as well. They just do blog writing as well.
Content creation, video, right. Yeah. So you can't be good at everything, and I think that specialization is where it's at.
Yeah, definitely. I'll tell you a little bit of a story about myself. There's this gentleman called Christo on YouTube, and he always recommended this book, The Win Without Pitching Manifesto by Blair Enns. So I go and I read this book, and this book is telling me, at this time, I was like doing web design, logo design, social media design. I was doing like video editing. I was doing all of this stuff. And I'm reading this book, and this dude is like, do one thing and do it well. And I'm like, but no, I can't do one thing and do it well. I'm going to lose all of my clients. I've worked so hard to get to this point. And he's like, do one thing and do it well. So eventually I said to myself, okay, Devon, you've been in business for 2 years. Let's just try it out and see what happens. Let's just say yes and see what happens. So go onto my website. I strip down all of my services, and I say I'm only doing Google Ads. Go onto my YouTube channel, say I'm going to do away with all these other things. Not going to make any more videos about how to create a WordPress website or how to make blogs or anything like that. I'm just going to do videos on Google Ads. And the growth was literally instantaneous. I mean, for 2 years, I grew my business by 69% year over year. And it just started, it just started snowballing. And it's something that a lot of business owners, even entrepreneurs that I work with when I consult with them, I think we're fooled by society into this mentality of more is more. And so you always want to offer more, do more, say more. And what happens is you don't understand that that's demanding so much of your time that you can't really focus down on who you really are, what you're good at, and maybe what you don't want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. You can do other things, but you need to lead with one thing, right? So, even though we for example, also run LinkedIn ads or Amazon ads or whatever, other ads, when our clients request it from us, but we'll always lead with like Google or Facebook ads or Meta ads, right?
Yeah.
So, and people just like, you lose so much time and energy, especially energy, doing things you don't like. And so when you leave that out and you replace it with doing something which you love and where the energy you create is amazing, that automatically has that ripple effect that you just described.
Yeah, yeah, that's very true. And I think it's one of the beautiful things in life whereby less is more. You know, we're always saying that less is more, less is more. But when you really focus on what you like doing, every day is a party. You know, I tell my friends, like, and I don't mind work at all because I'm just doing stuff that I like all the time. It's not like if I don't feel like doing something, I just don't do it. It's not in my services. And a lot of people also, and this is one thing that amazed me, is they think that by saying that you only do Google ads or that you only do X, they don't understand the client's still going to come back to you if they trust you. Once that relationship is there and once they see that you're good at what you do, you're still going to get all of the products and services and you're still going to get all the business from that clients. Because what happens is I turned from a Google ads expert and then somebody says, Devon, I need a business consultant. And now all of a sudden I feel like, okay, I can help you out with your business as well. And then all of a sudden they say, Devon, we really have this website deal. We're not sure who to give it to. Is this maybe something that you would maybe be interested in? And just because you're so good at one thing, to the client, they perceive you as being good at digital marketing as a whole. So you get to pick and choose what projects you take on, which is the best thing in the world. So you're not giving up anything by specializing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a good example.
Yeah, definitely. So what exactly is your role at your agency except drinking coffee and taking selfies on I almost said Instagram, on LinkedIn?
I think first and foremost, making sure that I'm in a good energy, that I feel good, that I'm in full health.
Yeah.
And only then I can ensure that I can service our clients well, I can provide a great value and lead the team. And then what comes after that is definitely like hiring people, hiring the right people. And then let me see what else I made a note of. Oh yeah, of course, like kind of, you know, the whole conversation with new clients, right? And being out there and showing people that, you know, the different values and working with each other and so on, and creating new ways of how people can engage with us. So one thing that I keep hearing from people over the years is that a big reason for why they trust me or my company is because they keep seeing me show up time and time again. So there's not been a period where I just like disappeared or whatever, but there's always a sign of life that I give online and showcasing my work and all of that. And that has created a lot of invisible trust that cannot be measured, but it plays a big role in clients coming to us, approaching us.
Wow. So basically you stay top of their mind by your posts and the content that you create and the fact that you're always open with learning and training and that sort of stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
Fantastic. 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 And is it fun being the boss?
Yes.
What's the favorite? What's the best part of being a boss and what's the worst part of being the boss?
For me, there's not really a worst part, to be honest.
Yeah.
The best part is that I can say that I want to work from wherever, whenever, however, and with whoever.
Oh, that is a great way of putting it. That is an awesome way of putting it. I think a lot of entrepreneurs are hands-on. They want to be with their team every single day. Why don't you do that?
Because I don't like to be babysitted myself. So I just try to hire people that are partially good at what to do, but more so want to learn, have an attitude to learn, are not afraid of making mistakes, and that just want to do something good in the world.
That is awesome. That is awesome. That is an awesome requirement for hiring people. And it's funny you should say that because I'm exactly the same. I hired a copywriter from, I think he was from Manchester. So the guy comes to me and he's like, Devon, okay, you want me to do this copy for your landing page? when do you need this by? You know, how would you like me to do this? How would you? I said to him, dude, I don't care if you go into the woods and if you get the inspiration if you go camp in the woods for
Yeah,
2 weeks and you feel like you're inspired, bring it to me when it's
yeah,
ready because I trust you. And he said he'd never worked with someone who just let him do what he wants to do. Like I think a lot of entrepreneurs have this thing whereby they want to control every single step and every
yeah,
single click and every single word. But sometimes you just need to let people, you
yeah,
have to trust people. I think that's the
yeah.
operative word. You have to trust people and let them get on with the job of getting on with the job.
Yeah, and I mean, you yourself feel if it's not the right fit, and that's absolutely normal. That can happen as well, right? So, yeah, go with your feelings, see what feels good. If the person does the job, and if the person's working style is so different from you that it just doesn't work, well, then it doesn't work, and then there's a better opportunity for them and for you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's so true. And you've done a lot of business mentoring as well, am I right?
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
So, not just that I try to mentor like anybody I work with to some extent, but I always mentor some young people on the side, and I've mentored entrepreneurs all over the world for the past years, sometimes through organizations like Grow Movement or when we were at Google, and sometimes just like as much as I can on the side.
Yeah.
So I think what a lot of people lack in this situation is that they don't have anybody they could ask or that they could talk to reliably, because if we look at the position of an entrepreneur, they're already at the top.
Yeah.
So, and at the top, it gets very thin in terms of the people that you can work with, talk to, and trust.
Yeah. Or learn
So,
from. Like it's very hard to
yeah,
find people to learn from. Yeah.
yeah. And so a lot of entrepreneurs fall into this trap of like, okay, I'll just work harder, just work more, or I'll just do more myself, right? Without knowing
What to do.
really that there are better ways. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you go to Instagram, I think right now, if you type in work hard as a hashtag, it has like over 35 million posts. Like if you go on YouTube, you'll see work hard, work every waking hour, like don't sleep and, just like be productive every hour of the day. But
Yeah.
that's just not how life works.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah.
I was a victim of hustle culture when I started off because I had like this hustle culture in my mind, work hard and stuff like that. And I ended up working 16-hour days back to back for about a year and a half. And eventually I ended up in hospital, didn't learn my lesson, came back out, ended up in hospital again, didn't learn my lesson, came back out. And by the third time, I was like, you're always burnt out. Yeah,
Mhm.
something's wrong. I just couldn't figure out what was the thing. Like, am I not
Mhm.
working hard? Do I not deserve this? I've been putting in the hours and stuff like that. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they have this mental block whereby the answer's always them and the answer's never external, like instead
Mhm.
of going and just talking to somebody like Pam and asking, how are you doing this? I feel like as
Yeah.
entrepreneurs, we always feel like you have the answer. You need to figure all of this out by yourself. And sometimes that can be a very dangerous thing. And only after the third time I went to a hospital and came out and I said, okay, Devon, you've been putting in 16-hour days. Clearly, it's not working. You're always tired. You're always grumpy, which is very unusual for me because I'm a happy kind of guy. So I said, let's try something. For the next week, you're not going to work hard at all. You're going to
Mhm.
try and delegate as much as possible. And you're going to put in 2, 3, maybe 10 hours for the entire week. And funnily enough, when I started doing that, the business actually
Yeah.
just started growing.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
just like automatically it just
Yeah.
went by itself. And I
Yeah.
always liken it to sometimes when you're raising a kid, not that I have a kid myself, but sometimes when you're raising a kid, the kid can walk by itself. All you need to do is just encourage it to walk. And a business
Yeah.
is the same thing. Sometimes as a leader, all you have to do is just make sure that the environment is right and the business will grow
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah, because what most people don't realize is that, and this may be even a little bit easier for women than for men, is even if you put on a facade, like a face in a meeting, right? And you're keeping yourself super busy or you put on makeup as a woman, right? You can never hide your energy.
Yeah.
Your energy, like other people are always going to feel it. And if you have a stressed energy, then that's what you're going to get. That's what people are going to mirror to you.
I love this topic. I absolutely love this topic because I was literally just talking about it the other day. Like whatever you feel, whoever you talk to is going to become a reflection of that feeling. So if you're always stressed out, nervous and anxious about where the next money is going to come from or when the next invoice is going to be paid, your client's going to feel it. You're going to feel it. Even in your marketing, you're going to sense that desperation. And a lot of people think, oh no, it's only them, it's happening in their head. Nobody knows. You can feel that energy shift in a person. So I guess also another thing I want to talk to you about is when you're teaching all of these business owners and they're going through all of this stuff, do you ever feel like you have imposter syndrome? Do you ever feel like, who am I to be teaching these people about business? Or was it always just a natural thing for you?
I have definitely underestimated myself for a long time. I think I barely use the term lucky because luck is something you attract when you've prepared well and
True.
you're in the right mindset. But I've had a business mentor early on, like in the first year of my business, that I found online and that resonated with me. And he and his team have taught me a lot about those things.
Okay.
So about reaching out, standing confidently in your shoes. But I think it also took me to get to a certain age to have that confidence.
I was going to say that's one of the things that I love about you is just the confidence you have. I really love that about you because you're confident, but at the same time, you're humble. And that's a very difficult combination to find in an entrepreneur these days. Like you've accomplished so much, but you don't get the sense that you're showing off or bragging. You get the sense from your posts and talking to you and going to your trainings. You get the sense that Pamela's just really trying to help other entrepreneurs be where she is right now and be in a clear mental space.
Yeah, and I just know way too many people who may have accomplished something well, but then they try to show off through or in materialistic ways.
Yeah.
When beneath the surface, they're empty, they're sad, they're not happy, they're insecure. And so I've seen it so many times that putting on a facade never works in the long term. You lose people's trust. And it's just so much work to keep up anything that's not you. Like
It's true.
It's nothing easier than being yourself in this world. Nothing easier. It took me a long time to learn. Long time. But it really is the best thing you can do because then the good things come to you.
It's true. Like I was saying last night, I was talking to my girlfriend and I said, I've spent most of my life trying to be like other people, talk like this one, walk like this one, run a business like this one. And only when my mindset started shifting towards being just the best version of myself, that's where most of my growth happened, is when I said, okay, I'm not going to put so much energy into trying to mimic this person or that person. I love what they do. And I think there is something to learn there and to take those lessons and apply to my own life. But I'm not going to try and be that person. I'm rather just going to try and be the best version of myself. And it's a beautiful transformation.
Yeah, and it starts with with the small things. So to give you an example, with a lot of Africans, it's getting better now, like especially Sub-Saharan Africans. When you look at their CV and the languages they speak, they often only list English or French.
Yes.
When in reality, they know Yoruba, Hausa, Zulu, Swahili, whatever else. Like a lot of people in Africa speak a lot more languages than any European ever will.
Yeah.
And so simply by putting up those languages in your CV on LinkedIn, you own a little bit more of who you are. And it's not your responsibility to explain to someone what Hausa is. That's their job, right? But this is a part of you, like you speaking all these languages and being able to being such a diverse set of cultures incredibly valuable. Like I think Trevor Noah speaks about this, where it's so natural for him to speak all these languages because that's just how he grew up, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, my mother, when my mother was proud of me, she spoke to me in English. And when she was really angry, she spoke to me in Afrikaans. So
a lot of people, yeah. When mothers switch languages, yeah.
And my mother used to switch Afrikaans on me like halfway through the conversation. And then I had to learn, okay, fine, it's Afrikaans mode now. I have to, yeah, Mark, bye, sorry. What. Now you have to, you have to lower your voice and you have to speak Afrikaans. And then after that, you switch back to English once everything is fine. So it's one of those things.
Yeah. And it's interesting, like even like subconsciously, then we tend to even start to associate like maybe speaking Afrikaans with something negative, right?
Isn't it crazy? Isn't it crazy? Like
yeah.
that's my quote unquote, my I'm angry and I'm yelling at people in traffic language is Afrikaans. And then after that, you calm down and you're chilled. Now you're the English guy again.
Yes, please go.
Yeah. Exactly. What would you say? You see, now I even lost my train of thought now because I'm thinking in Afrikaans already and I can't ask you the question in Afrikaans. How many languages do you speak, by the way, as a segue?
I am fluent in 4. So I can speak German, English, Spanish, and Russian almost on the same level. And then I've learned French as well, which if you give me like 2 to 3 weeks in a French-speaking country, I'd be back at it pretty well.
Yeah.
And I'm also having currently a tutor for Arabic because I'm trying to foster that a little bit more. And Arabic has always been like an on and off relationship, but I really want to learn this language. Like I love it. I love how it sounds.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've also learned Chinese, but I haven't practiced it much in the last years.
Okay. I'm learning Portuguese right now. I sort of wanted to learn Italian and then I just gave up halfway. I don't know why I gave up because I absolutely love the language. I love the way that they talk with their hands. So for me, do you have any language learning hacks for me? Is there something that you do in order to be able to absorb the language faster? Or do you just go to that country and try and speak to as many people as possible? What do you do in terms of language learning?
So first of all, I think Portuguese is amazing. I love the language as well. Confuses me with Spanish every single time I try to learn it. I think a big advantage for me was that I started learning languages very early. So when I was like 9, 10, 11, 12.
Wow.
And that helped me. So a lot of these languages I started learning in school, which is incredible. Like if anybody is listening that has like kids or something, teach them languages because whatever you teach them now, they're going to retain for later, forever. And
is that normal in Austria to just have different language classes?
No, I just opted in for more. So like when I was 9, I had English. When I was 11, I started with French, then dropped French. At 12, I started Spanish. At 13, Russian, and at 14, Chinese, because I wanted to take. So when I chose Russian, I could also choose something nature science based.
Yeah.
And then Chinese was like an addition outside of the school. It was taking place in a different school. So, but I already had that awareness very early on that if I learn it now, I'll have it for a good time of my life.
That's cool. That is so.
Yeah.
That is such vision for a kid to have, basically, to know that you're going to have these languages for a long time. Because I think what I discovered, and this is only in my 20s, I went to England, and now all of a sudden you're meeting all of these foreigners. Like you meet people from Spanish, and there were these chicks. They were really hot chicks from Spain, and I was like, okay, you need to talk to this girl now. But this woman doesn't speak any English whatsoever, and you don't speak any Spanish whatsoever. And then you start realizing, it's not more about, it's not learning a language for the sake of learning a language. Every language you learn is connectivity. Mm-hmm. Whether it's for business, whether it's just to have a chat with someone, whether it's just to get used to someone faster, it's such a massive advantage to have when you speak the same language as another person, because the smile that it brings to that person when they realize, wow, this person can actually understand what I'm saying, it's an amazing thing.
Yeah, and that was a big reason for why I learned these languages, because I wanted to be able to understand the biggest populations in this world.
Yeah.
And I mean, you experience countries completely differently when you speak the local language or if
Yeah.
you only speak English.
Yeah.
So you get a much more like in-depth experience, and you also understand how people think, because language really does shape our brains and the way we think. So you understand cultural differences a lot more.
That's true. That's very true. So you've been to over 90 plus countries at the time of recording this.
Yes.
I am so jealous of that. Let me just say that. I'm so jealous of that. 90 plus countries. I'm going to repeat that one more time, people. 90 different countries. Okay. Plus, she's adding more to the list. So I want to start off. I'm not going to go through every single one of the countries, but I think I want to start off with your experiences. And specifically, when I was reading the Forbes article, it said that you climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. What was that like? That's the tallest peak in Africa, right?
Yes.
Yes. What was that like?
So funnily enough, while I was at Google, I was looking for yet another challenge.
Something to say yes to.
Yeah, probably. And when I feel a little bit stuck, I try to look for an experience that's new to me.
Okay.
And I'd known a friend back then who had a local company in Tanzania, for like a tourism company for people to go up there. And I didn't prepare that much for it. I tried to mostly prepare mentally for it, again, like visualizing myself on there. And I never ended up having any breathing difficulties or altitude issues.
Okay.
So it was overall a good experience because of the mental preparation I had. And I would say I'm also a fairly fit person. So, I mean, I grew up with hiking and all of those things.
Yeah. And Google has personal trainers, of course. So why wouldn't you be?
Yeah, but like I fell sick like 3 weeks before. So I was like, yeah, it was not like a super smooth preparation.
Okay.
Life throws these curveballs at you.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
And after you climbed that mountain, what did it feel like when you were on top?
So what's interesting is that the last part you climb up, the last 6-7 hours that you walk, you start at midnight so that you reach the peak in the morning. And one of the main reasons is that you don't see how far it still is. And you can only walk very slowly because of the altitude, right?
Yeah.
And the decreased amount of oxygen. So you have these like 6-7 hours where you literally cannot do anything else but surrender to life and be in the moment.
Wow.
And that was a hugely teachable moment. And where you notice, just take one step after the other, you'll get there. You'll get there. You may not know when. It may be this year, next year, this week, tomorrow, in a couple hours, but you will get there. Trust and keep walking, right?
And this is in the darkness. This is at night.
In the complete pitch dark, right? I mean, you see a little bit of like, from the moonlight, and you have your own headlight, but that's it. And I mean, when you get up, it's just this beautiful feeling of having achieved something very beautiful, because sunrise is just incredible on this mountain, because you trusted in yourself, because you took all these steps before, right? And it was another proof for me that I can achieve whatever I set my mind to.
Yeah, that's a beautiful feeling. That's a beautiful feeling, man. Yeah, I gotta climb a mountain, man. I'm always scared. I don't know why I'm so scared to climb a mountain, man. I just have this image of me falling down.
Fear is where it's at. Go there, crush it.
That's true. That's very true. So, okay, so climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, we got that out of the way. What are your requirements for going to any country? Is there like, do you have this thing where you have a couple of things that you check off before you even consider a country? And what are those criteria?
So I usually want to go by feeling and intuition. So I just get this inputs that maybe I have friends in a certain country, meetings, maybe the potential to host a workshop, and so on. The only exclusion criteria for me is if it's a country where people smoke a lot of cigarettes, I would not stay a long time. So, for example, I went to Jordan this year and I wasn't so much aware of it, but actually 70% of Jordanians smoke, which is like a really high amount.
That's
And
like
I
what,
cannot,
7 out of every 10 people
it's
smoking.
insane. Yeah. And I cannot stand cigarette smoke. I have a very strong opinion about it.
Same
I
here.
do not
Same
support
here.
it.
I'm exactly the same as
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
So yeah, I stayed, I think, only a week,
Yeah.
which was still quite long, but there's other countries where, what was that? I think Ukraine is a pretty high cigarette smoking as well. Moldavia, so I only stayed a day or a couple of days.
If I ask a question along those lines, is why do you think that is? Like, did they discover cigarettes later than the rest of the world, or is it deemed? Because I know in South Africa we have this right way. It's called cool. So it's kind of like what the cool people do, and then it ends up being a lot more people smoking than usually would. Because I can't stand. I'm telling you something. If somebody walks into my house and they smell of
Yeah.
cigarettes,
Oh yeah, no.
I
No.
can't, like, I literally, I
Yeah.
can't even, I can be there, tolerate it for that 6 or 8 hours, but I smell it. My nose is so sensitive to it that
Yeah.
it lingers on, and it really ends up irritating me a lot.
Yeah. I think you just have to look into like the economic circumstances of tobacco companies present in those countries. Like if you look at Austria, I mean, at least now, it's not anymore allowed to smoke in like restaurants and cafes, but that used to be the case until I think 2015 or 2017 or something, like a long time.
Yeah.
And that's because the tobacco industry has a strong lobby here. So yeah, it's wherever they can get their money, I guess.
I guess. And when you go to a country, are you looking for a specific like experience? Like, for example, I want to go whale shark diving, so I'll pick maybe Mozambique, or I'll pick maybe not Namibia, but Seychelles, or Papua New Guinea. So I'll say, okay, I want to go to those because I want to experience that thing. Or is it more you go to the country first and then from there you decide what you want to do in there?
Mostly the second version.
Yeah. So you're the kind of make it up as you go person, if I were to describe.
Yes, to a large extent, and somehow always great experiences come to me. So it's like I was in Costa Rica at this event and got to know a person there who actually lived in Costa Rica, and his parents owned a hotel there with like thermal spas, because there's a lot of like thermal spots in Costa Rica. And so I couldn't have found out about that hotel before, probably with a lot of difficulty and time.
Yeah.
But because I met the person, I was like, okay, I'm going to stay a little bit longer here. I'm going to enjoy this.
Yeah.
And so that's how a lot of situations play out.
And are you the hotel person, the Airbnb person, or more like the backpackers person? Where do you usually stay?
Not the backpacker. I would get too much annoyed with using a large backpack. I've been looking for an alternative to Airbnb. I'm not going to go into detail, but I think they have some work to do.
Okay. We'll leave it at that.
Customer support and a lot of different aspects. But I'd love me a good hotel from like every now and then. So it depends a bit on the country where I go to. So for example, India, you can get 4 or 5-star hotels there for like $50, $60 a night.
Whoa.
Like
5 stars.
Another person,
stars.
oh yeah, I just checked the prices yesterday. Like it's amazing. So why would I stay in an Airbnb there if I can have a 5-star experience for that amount?
That's true. That is super true.
That
is super true. I didn't even think about it that way. Different things have different prices in different countries, Devon, and you can kind of measure it up as you go. Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So you came to South Africa once upon a time.
Yeah.
And how did you find that?
Yeah, so South Africa was also one of these things where like, everybody told me the first time, it's like, oh, Joburg is the most dangerous city in the world and you shouldn't go. What most people don't know is that actually Joburg also has one of the highest reported crime rates. Yeah. So it's kind of natural for crime rate to be higher. Was great. Never had any issue. Safe. I just think wherever you go, you should listen to the locals and just stick to certain local rules.
Yeah.
And then second time went to Cape Town, had a blast, miss it, totally want to go back. It's just a beautiful place. Like, oh my God. Yeah.
What did you find the people to be like in South Africa?
Good overall. You can clearly notice the scars of apartheid still.
Yeah.
In the way that people see themselves and see each other.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of the image that South Africa is dangerous has primarily been mentioned by my white friends.
Yeah.
There, the white people I knew. And so them keeping promoting that and being in this energy and space of that, I think does a lot of injustice to the country.
Yeah.
It's met great people, love it. And it's, wherever you go, like you automatically are surrounded by people from so many different tribes and cultures. And I mean, I would have loved growing up by so many different cultures. I grew up with only Austrians. Like that was boring. Right? So yeah.
Yeah, man, I had African friends, I had white friends, I had colored friends, I had Indian friends, I had South Korean girlfriend when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
Like it's wild to explain, and we have like 11 different national languages. Yeah. It's so wild growing up in South Africa, and I feel like a lot of countries have this homogenous, very boring, so you get that side and you're like, it's kind of boring. Nothing interesting happens here. So yeah, I love that about South Africa specifically. And I think, we've got a lot of problems, but the hatred that the apartheid scars and the hatred it left is our biggest problem. Because if we could really start just looking at each other as brothers and sisters, it would clear out so much things, man. It would clear out so much things. Yeah, definitely. So you're going to all of these different countries, and how are you running your business at the same time while doing all of this stuff? Are we talking about you just have your laptop and you just have a little remote session with your team every once in a while? What type of business owner are you? How do you keep on top of things?
So I try to keep my meetings to Mondays and Thursdays only, so that Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Fridays I have free to work, like to do inspired work. And with some team members, I do have weekly meetings, not with all, because it just doesn't always make sense. And with clients, I mostly have like bi-weekly meetings. So I think I'm just really organized and I can work from a lot of places. So one of my favorite things to do is before I hop on a flight, I go to a lounge, because then in a lounge, I have like 2.5 to 3 hours. I literally schedule that in, where I can get really focused work done. I have food, right? Usually great food.
Yeah.
And
all you have to do is focus on your work, because the environment is kind of static and you know what you're going to get in the lounge, so you can do whatever it is you need to do.
Yeah. And then I'd have this break of like half an hour to an hour to where you go to board, you get on the flight. And then usually I had a break and I can work again. I can have another 2 to 3 hours shift, so to speak, right? Yeah. And I use coffee shops to the same extent. I try to be really respectful, so I'm not one of those people who stays in the coffee shop for the whole day and only gets one coffee. Like, seriously. So I'd stay like 2.5 hours to 3 max, and then I move, right? And I take a break, or I do something different.
Yeah.
Right. So I just try to work in like 2.5 to 3 hour blocks, block time off. And yeah, usually I don't work more than 5 or 6 hours a day. So.
Oh, that's good. That's seriously good. And was it like that when you started your business, or did you slowly but surely pare it down to where you have that routine and that system in place?
Well, the routine was definitely of figuring out over the years as you go. And that's what everybody has to do. There's no one size fits all. Like, I know some people who swear on the Pomodoro technique, where you work 25 minutes, take a 5-minute break. That doesn't work for me at all. And
how do you stop yourself from, because you're into something like for 25 minutes and then
that's my issue with it. Yeah.
I'd struggle with that a lot as well.
Yeah. So Yeah, just I would say again, it comes back to listening to yourself, making sure you sleep enough. Like sleep is super important for me. And see what works for you. See which times of the day you have a higher value output for clients, and be strict with your own schedule. So a lot of people would schedule meetings with clients beyond certain hours, like at like 10 p.m. or 5 a.m. or whatever. And I don't do that
Do
because
you
if
get a
I'm
lot of
not
requests for
with
that though? Because I end up getting so much requests from people wanting to do that with me. You know,
I
the
think not anymore because I'm very clear and straightforward with when my calendar is open. So it is something that I present as a non-negotiable.
yeah.
And so people don't question that. And that's why I rarely ever get that.
Let me tell you what happens with me. The person usually books the last available hour on my Calendly. And then what happens is after they finish the hour, they're like, oh, it's still morning here. So would you mind if we go a bit over and I'll pay you a little bit extra for the consulting? And I'll be like, I have to cut it short here. As much as I love to, keep on
I have
going
the
with you.
solution. What are you going to do is, this is something I've been using over the years, clarity.fm.
This is why we interview Pamela, because she sorts out our
Yes.
problems.
So, because then literally people schedule a call and they
Yeah.
really pay you for every minute that they talk with you. So if they go over, you still get paid.
Okay, awesome. No problem. That
Yeah.
I'll definitely check out.
Served me very well. Like every request is like, oh, can I pick your brain? Or like, I want to schedule a call. I'm like, yep, sure, here. And if they don't schedule a call, then they don't value my time. So
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you. And so you've been to all of these different countries. Give me your 3 experiences that really changed your life. 3 times that you went. It doesn't have to be 3. It could just be 1.
yeah.
Let's not just give me the thing that that moment, everybody has that moment where something changes mentally for them. And
Yeah.
when was that?
Yeah. I would say the first one was definitely Nigeria the first time when I was 18, because I went there with a relatively open mind. I tried my best and got smacked really hard. Like it's like when you're Austrian, right? And the bus is 3 minutes late, people lose their shit, right? And they get a heart attack. So that's not healthy for your life. And then you come to Nigeria where the bus only leaves when it's full, and that can take hours.
So you chill.
Or yeah, or like all the potholes on the road, right? So you take ages. And I mean, in Nigeria, whenever someone says, oh, we meet at 10 a.m., it's not going to be before noon.
Yeah.
And for an
definitely.
Austrian, that's like, oh my God, you like disrespecting me. You cannot manage your time. Like I had to manage all of that, right? So it really helped me become more patient, become healthier, and not get stressed out because of those things, right?
Yeah.
So that was an important lesson for me. Then the second one would be China, because being in China and living in China really helps you understand how Chinese think. And it's a very different culture, very different country, but has such a big importance in our lives.
Yeah.
Like most likely right now, at least 70 to 80% of what you have around you is made in China.
Yeah. From this microphone to that light bulb over there to these lights shining on my face, everything. China.
Yeah. And then, I mean, Kilimanjaro definitely, but I would say skydiving in South Africa.
What? Serious?
Yeah. Because that story, and it's, I don't know, like, it's just, so I've scheduled the appointment, right, at the Pretoria airport. And it was somewhat, I think, early afternoon or something. And I had some time and I was staying in Joburg. So I was like, let me go to Pretoria first. I had no car, right?
Okay.
At that time, I was 19 or 20. And so I went with one of the taxis to Pretoria, right? Yeah. I was like, okay, let me check out, I think it's called Union Hill.
Yeah.
So I see something new and just spend some time until I have my appointment. At that time, I didn't know still how to get to this airport, because obviously no public transport goes to this private plane airport and where you do that. Didn't have a car either, didn't have the money to rent a car. I think even I was too young even to rent a car as a foreigner. And so looked around Union Hill and then saw some police guys, and I was like, let me ask them. Maybe they know a way to get there. So I asked them, and they were like, okay, let me get back to you in 5 minutes. Give me 5 minutes. So I waited. They came back within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And we're like, we have some time. We can drive you there. So I ended up being driven in a police car with 2
Police
guys
escort, so cool.
Oh yeah, obviously black, right? Like,
Yeah.
and then me, the white girl in the back.
Yeah.
It must have been a hilarious sight for everybody. And so like they dropped me off there, and that was a beautiful display of humanity, right? Of really humans just being nice, right? I didn't even have any money to give them, right? So it was like, it was just a nice thing.
That's one thing that I always find surprising about foreigners is like you always want to pay everyone for everything. Like I don't know what it is about, I'm gonna say your people, but calm the F down. You don't need to pay for stuff in Africa. Like in Africa, we can go to our neighbor. Like I can go to my neighbor and I can say, do you have any coffee? I just ran out. And my neighbor would be like, here's half a jar of coffee. And then we wouldn't even think about, I have to pay this person back, because it's that concept of Ubuntu. Like we just look after each other in Africa. You know what I'm saying? Like if you get a ride or if you get a lift, it's just looking after someone. And I find that Europeans are always like, take my money, please take my money.
I've had this conversation with a dear friend of mine who is a wonderful Austrian woman who has spent many decades in Africa doing business, like serious business. And her husband recently died, but she wants to go back to Ghana. And she was talking about having someone help her drive her to the airport and drop her off at her place where she's going to stay. And I was like, no problem. I'll ask some of my peeps. Is like, they just drive you, whatever, right? Just what do you do? And he's like, yeah, and I'll also pay them. I was like, no, please do not pay them. These are guys who want to help, who have a proper
They've
car.
got the resources. They're happy to help.
If you pay them, it's an insult to them.
Yeah.
Right. And it can be something very exhausting in Austria because you'd always have to think about it. Oh, am I even? Am I even?
Yeah.
But it's not a helpful way of thinking at all.
That's true. That's very true. That's very true. Okay. So then you skydived at the place when you got there.
Yeah. And then, so it's an interesting experience because when you go up, you realize that your life could maybe be over if this goes wrong. Like you've come to this point where like, oh, there's a chance, right? And so like I was in the plane and you go up, I think 2.5 rounds. And I'm like, okay, thank you for my life. Thank you for everything. Like I was literally doing a gratitude rant on my life. And so that I could leave with peace if anything happened. And what you then realize is as soon as you jump, you see this beautiful round shape of the earth. And you realize that whatever fear you had was just complete BS and was anyway never going to happen.
Wow.
So
that's incredible.
Yeah, that's why I would recommend everybody to go skydiving at least once in their life, because it's going to teach you so hard about what fear actually is.
That's true. That is super true. Wow. That is a great story. That is a great story. And we need to talk about another great story, which is the Madeira socks.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have them available? So, okay, for those of you who don't know, me and Pam just had like a chat before this official call. So I told her that my girlfriend was from Portugal, specifically Madeira, and we're planning on moving to Portugal soon, maybe even Madeira. And Pam just runs off. And I'm like, where are you going? And she grabs, you can show it to them. She got these socks from Madeira. So tell us about the socks, Pam.
My parents went on holiday there and brought me them, and it's like they're the only like thick pair of socks I have, and they're super convenient. So literally in like autumn and winter, I wear them every day.
Yeah, those are the Madeira
That's what
socks,
they're like. You can see they're used. So yeah.
And now you guys know the Madeira sock story. All right, so we covered basically most of the journeys, the experiences in your life. I guess by now we need to get into the Google Ads stuff. The stuff that people are here for. Obviously, I have a YouTube channel where I teach entrepreneurs how to get good with Google Ads, but I try and stay away from the technical jargon because I feel like a lot of people come at these guys and they talk about remarketing, conversion tracking. They're talking about programmatic ads and stuff. And people are just like, dude, we just want the ad thing. And we just want the customers that come from the ad thing. We're not into the super technical terms. So if you had to speak to somebody who was brand new to Google Ads, didn't know anything, and you had to give them advice about Google Ads, what type of ads they should run, your typical approach to running a campaign, your favorite campaign types, what would you tell that person if you had maybe just 4 minutes to share with them something that could help them with their Google Ads?
Yeah. So in the last 8 years that I've been doing this, I have never used the word programmatic, and it was never of interest to my clients. So don't worry about that jargon. It's not important. And do a course first, do a couple courses first, and then try to get a mentor or try to get an internship. Like, I do have quite some people approach me from time to time who are like, hey, I'm learning this. Can I, like, help you with something, or get some hands-on knowledge? Like, reach out to people on LinkedIn, and just ask. And know that it's a step-by-step journey. Like, you learn from seeing the data in your account week by week, and it's impossible to know everything through a course, right? Yeah. Get the Google Ads certificates. Like, they serve as a good reminder for the knowledge that you should have.
Yeah.
And yeah, practice. I think a lot of young people these days with that whole like Instagram and Snapchat, whatever generation, are so used to getting everything right now that they do not have the patience anymore to put in time and effort and wait.
Yeah.
For something.
One of the things that I teach in my Google Ads course is that people should, especially entrepreneurs, because the course is built for entrepreneurs, is that people should look at the data instead of making their minds up about whatever data is going to come in. And I feel like a lot of people run campaigns and they think, no, my campaign should have a 35% conversion rate. My cost per click should be so much, and my cost per acquisition. You don't know that in most cases because you've never ever ran a campaign before. These are just things that you're telling yourself, or best case scenarios that you're hoping for. But until you actually run a campaign and you see what your click costs are like, when you see what your engagement is like, then you'll have a clear picture of what success will look like. But you can't dictate that your Google Ads are just going to run a certain way and just be unhappy that they're not there yet. And I feel like a lot of online influencers, they have this way of, oh, if you follow these 5 steps, it'll get you a 20% conversion rate on Google Ads. I'm a dude from America. I know what I'm talking about. And then they just do it. And then these end up being the most miserable customers ever because they literally feel like they're supposed to have a 20% conversion rate. But it's not realistic, especially when you've never ran a campaign before in your life.
Yeah, I had that with a dear client of mine, love her, where we were working together for some months. And then she was part of this coaching program. And there was a dude there, French guy, white French guy, right? So that already gives some people authority.
Yeah.
And he was telling her to do certain things in Google Ads account that she was like, oh, let's try this out. And I told her before that that's not going to work, but she still wanted to try it out. In rare instances, I'll let them try it out.
Yeah.
In most instances, I'll just be like, no. Yeah. I think it took her barely a week and a half to see that what this person with like less than 10% experience of what I had is not working. Like her cost per conversion just ended going up. She started getting less conversions, and she was like, okay, we'll go back to your stuff. And I was like, all right, you spent the week and a half's money here. But yeah, that still happens.
Yeah. It happens to me also quite often, whereby a customer feels very strongly about a direction, but their main reasoning, once we get down to it and I start asking them, why do you feel so strongly about this direction, is, oh, some guy somewhere said this. And it's like, that's a very scary thing to just spend money on some guy. And the weird thing is, the guy if you really trusted the guy who's teaching you this, why are we having the conversation? Why aren't you with the guy? You know what I'm saying? But it always ends up like, that guy said they should do it, but they want me to do for them what that guy said they should do. And I'm just not that guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I once had this hotel in Switzerland as a client, and they, like, more than 50% of searches of the search terms were for hotels in like Morocco, like 3-star hotels. They were 5-star hotel and like other stuff that didn't fit. And I asked them why they'd set it up that way. And they were like, well, the agency we just worked with had done campaigns for Rolls-Royce as well. So we thought that they would do a good job. And I'm like, that doesn't mean anything. That just means someone had good sales skills and maybe knew someone.
Exactly.
But, yeah.
That's so true. I had one customer, he was selling kitchens in Australia locally. So he builds these big custom kitchens, these beautiful kitchens. He was getting leads from Ireland, but he works in a local area. And this agency was charging him an arm and a leg to get him 3 clicks, 3 very expensive clicks per day from Ireland. And that was it.
Yeah.
And I said to him, what's up? Why did you keep the agency for so long? He's like, no, I just thought these guys knew what they were doing. I think the moral of the story is there are a lot of people who look like they know what they're doing, but in reality, there's actually very few that can get you to where you want to be with your Google ads.
Yeah.
So usually, what does a consulting session look like with you? If a client sat down with you, do you spend just time listening to them, seeing where they want to be, or what does it look like when we consult with you?
So if it's like the first time session, then it's a lot of me listening, asking a few questions here, mostly trying to understand where they are, how they got to where they are, what they tried so far, what didn't work, and where they want to go.
Yeah.
And then we'll take it from there. So.
Okay. And are you ever scared that Google might automate you out of a job and automate you out of business?
Not really. I think that what's going to be a lot more valuable in the future is human thinking, human creativity.
Yeah.
And a lot of aspects can't be automated yet. I mean, yes, we have like AI copywriters and so on. But there's still a lot of data analysis where the cool things really pop up when you look into it, when you put in that effort, right? When you know how to combine certain things, when you know how to set up a dashboard, how to track conversions, how to work with Google Tag Manager, right? So there's all these like little setup things that, I mean, even though they're planning to go away from cookies next year, right? It's still going to need human input, and that may look a bit different, but I don't think it's going to go away.
Yeah. And there are a lot of nuances when it comes to understanding the data as well, especially in terms of what qualifies as a good lead and a bad lead. And I feel like sometimes, conversion trackings will track a conversion, but sometimes we're aiming for a certain type of person. And sometimes we need the machine learning to catch up to that ideal customer that we're trying to target. And I think a lot of people don't get that. It's just not going to happen overnight that, AI is going to understand all the nuances of human behavior just like that. Yeah. It's going to take a long time. Well, at least I think it's going to take a long time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah. So for our last section, and we're almost at the end now, but I really don't want this conversation to end because I've really been learning a lot from you. So let's talk a little bit about mentality, okay, and your life philosophy. You're speaking to young Pamela and you want her to know a couple of things. What would your advice be for any young person who's starting out in life? And I'm not talking about Google Ads advice. I'm talking about just life in generally. What would your advice be to them?
Yeah, back then it was a very fluffy concept for me, but mindset really is anything. If you think you can do something, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. So, and if you really internalize that concept, you'll start to understand it, because a lot of people have a growth mindset maybe in one area of their life, but in another not.
Yeah.
And it's really up to you and what you choose. And we know by now that our brain cannot distinguish between reality and imagination. So why not simply think the best thoughts that you want about your own life, right? Yeah. Like, why don't you want to have the best life possible?
Yeah.
And that all starts with you, which can be very uncomfortable sometimes, because you really have to look yourself in the mirror and be honest. And that's hard for a lot of people. It's really hard. But once you do that, life gets so much better and easier.
That's true. That's true. You said something early on in our conversation about having a trust of yourself, having intuition, and selecting good thoughts. Could you dive a little bit in deeper to that specific point? Because you talked about how sometimes you'll have these bad thoughts, but you want to replace them with good ones. How does that work?
So it's very difficult to not think for human beings. And it's also very difficult, almost impossible to say, now I'm not going to think about something. Because when you use like the word not, you'll automatically think about it.
That's true.
That's how it works.
That's true.
And so the way to go about this is then to replace that, right? So for example, relationship example that's coming to my mind. Let's say you're a guy and you always get a certain type of girls. And you're like asking yourself, why am I always falling?
Is it because I'm short?
Right? Whatever, right? Some people don't even have an answer to that, but they just ask the question. The question itself is very disempowering, right? Because it's saying, why am I not getting something? So instead of that, I could say, okay, what do I want? Who do I need to be to attract that? And why am I always getting these amazing girls? Right? So you rephrase it. It doesn't have to yet to be true for you.
Yeah.
But you want to prime your brain to be on the lookout for these good examples subconsciously for you.
Yeah.
Because we only we only see or notice consciously, I think 5 to 10% or whatever. So that way you'd have to prime your brain so that it then does the job for you 90% of the time when you're not thinking about something.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So you're basically priming your thoughts to think the right type of thoughts and not gravitate towards the negativity.
Yes, and to also do that work when you just can't consciously think about it, because there's always things to do, you know. And like that can be translated to beliefs about business, about money, about health, like so much.
That's true. That's very true. And I always find myself with this thing whereby I've had to focus very hard to shift my mind from the negative to the positive. But once you apply that shift, you actually start understanding that the main person who was holding you back all along was you, because of the stories that you told yourself about what you cannot have and you cannot do, and you don't deserve this or you don't deserve this. But once you actually start focusing on, why do I believe this to be true? Why do I believe that to be true? All of a sudden, like, it starts clicking in your mind, like, hey, why do I actually believe this to be true? Like, it's something weird, like believing that you're ugly. It had to come from a certain experience. And what I've noticed in my own life is some things didn't belong in my head, but I put them there simply because I just misinterpreted a single event as meaning something else.
It's most of these things come from somewhere, and they come from somewhere, childhood, whatever. Because when you're grown as a baby, we're just a baby. We don't have anything there, right? It's just like whatever else comes into our minds. And that also means if it got into a mind one day, it can also go out of it again.
That's true. That's true. If it's there, it can be removed as well. That's super true. So where can people go? They say, I'm loving Pamela Wagner. After this 2 hours, I want to see the Madeira socks in person. Okay, maybe they don't want to see the Madeira socks in person, but where can people go to just, learn more from you? Where can they go?
Yeah, so I would say easiest would be to find me on LinkedIn, for example, just with my name, or on Instagram. I'm there with Pamela Wagner official. And if you want to learn more about like the neuroscientific and nerdy and mental side of running a business the healthy way, then you can go to hustleslesslivemore.com.
Fantastic. I'll link everything Pamela just said. I'll link it down in the description below to make it easy for you guys to find her, because she is really a gem. So the last thing that I want to ask you, okay, I promise I'm going to let you go after this, is, are you happy? And what are your plans for the future?
So yes, I'm happy and content, especially content. Being content is more important to me even than happiness.
Could you define the difference between the two?
Happy is like, I'm like,
yeah,
oh, this is great, this is awesome, right? And content is more being at peace with what is. and you're absolutely okay with right now being the best that it can be.
Yeah.
So there's no regrets, there's no negative emotions attached to it. And content is more evenly than happiness, because happiness is always like comes in waves, right?
Yeah.
And so content is a more steady way of being for me. And what's next, you asked, right?
Yeah. What are your plans going forward? Maybe with Ajala Digital? Are you planning on running for president? What are your plans going forward?
So I'll definitely have the company for as long as I'm able to add value to people's lives and companies. So that's important to me. And then I'm building up this new brand, Hustle Less and Live More, to kind of help entrepreneurs understand better how they can really live a more fulfilled life while working less, that they don't have to work that hard. And
it's a message. This is a message that the world needs right now, because this drives me crazy sometimes to see how some people are literally working themselves to death, getting rewards and ignoring the rewards completely, and working past those rewards, ignoring everything they achieve in life, just trying to catch up. Or I don't know, they have this thing in their mind whereby they just need to work. They get the reward, ignore the reward, it doesn't really matter, and then they just continue on.
I mean, I have a friend right now in hospital who is there because of stress, a stress-related disease. And that's just because of all these mental patterns that we have that came from somewhere. But, I want to show people that it's different, right? That those can be replaced, and that the fear that you face is not real. And that if you really want it and believe it, you can have whatever you desire, and it's yours, and you're worthy of that, and you deserve it.
That's true. That is super true. Well, Pamela, it has been an awesome 2 hours with you. I think this is one of my favorite conversations. We covered every single thing possible that we could cover. But, I think you've lived such an amazing life that I didn't want to leave any piece out, And I feel like also, what am I going to do? Like, get you on here and talk about Google Ads for like 10 minutes and then, no, I don't care about that. I want to know about Pamela. That's, it's my channel after all. I want to interview people that I find really interesting in life. So I want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for making the time. And thank you so much for spreading this message, because there's entrepreneurs out there that really need to know that their lives don't always have to be work on top of work, on top of work, on top of work. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for your kind words. It was a lot of fun, and I hope that whoever is listening gets a lot of value from this.
Oh, that's so cool. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. I will link to everything that you need to know about Pamela down below. And like I said, like and subscribe if you haven't already, because we're going to make sure that you get a lot more great content just like this. All right. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.